The story of the little bird. There was a little bird that sat on a tree branch and sang a beautiful song every day. Soon, people were queuing up below the bird, below the tree, and listening with mellifluous tune. It went on for days, and it couldn't have been better for the bird. One day, a cat was loitering nearby, heard the bird singing, perched itself on the nearby branch, and when the bird was about to start its next song, they pounced on it and ate it. Now you might be thinking, what a mechanical way to start a talk. But believe me, I've tried my best. I've looked at all possible versions of the story, including one where the cat falls in the bird falls in a pile of cow dung. But all end the same way. All end the same way with the bird inside the cat's stomach. And this is what got me thinking. In the world that we live in, there are so many rights, wrongs, opinions flying around everywhere, rules, regulation. What harm did the little bird do? It sang the same sweet song, and there was nothing wrong that it got done. And that's when it struck me. That's when it struck me my moment of epiphany. That it's not always about the right or wrong. It's about actions and consequences. A fact that ignores so much in our lives. The bird singing, one of the consequences was eagle enjoying its song, praising it. But then it also has an alternate consequence, attracting the predator. Now we all grow up listening to the fact that some things are purely right and some things are purely wrong. But that's not how it works. When we look into history, the concept of right and wrong has always been subjective, driven by perspective and text, and most importantly, the consequence. So let's get back in time and understand where does this concept of right and wrong come in? And I'll take you back about 3.7 billion years ago. Earth was just a bunch of methane clouds, and there was this bacteria and archaea trying to grow in this world. Was there a right or wrong there? No. All that was there was the bacteria and archaea trying to survive each day. And those small actions that they took each day which helped them better their chances of survival. And that is where what we call over a period of time as the evolution. 2.4 billion years ago, the cyanobacteria came. And this was the biggest change that happened on planet Earth because these were the first photosynthesizers. And what they did was harness the power of the sun, use the water, and create food. What was the interesting byproduct? Oxygen. The planet was suddenly oxygen rich. Now, can you ask that was the bacteria, cyanobacteria, right or wrong here? It was just a revolutionary step. 800 million years ago, the next big thing happened because the microorganisms started cooperating with each other. You had the sponges, the ribbons, the quills, a bunch of microorganisms that work together to create and work as a collective while still working individually. Now we all know human body cells are made up of mitochondria, which powers the cells to the ATP cycle. But does somebody know that this mitochondria used to be a different organism? Until one fine day it decided that it will enter another organism and just stay there and become its powerhouse. So was there a right or wrong here? Just an action and a consequence. A consequence which gives me energy today to speak in front of you is that mitochondria were prehistoric 800 million years ago. They just decided, I want a new home. 500 million years ago, in the Cambrian age, where everything really exploded and there was a plethora of new life forms coming in. And it was these life forms which today form the basis of today's world. Life was suddenly complex. This is where it starts getting interesting. 250 to 200 million years ago, the first dinosaurs biked. And boy, did they rule the planet Earth. They were on land, they were in air, they were in sea, everywhere they were found. You had the herbivorous dinosaurs, which went about every day grazing plants. Until one day, the carnivorous dinosaur ate it up. Was there a right or wrong here? No. There was simply an action of going out and grazing. It had a strict consequence which satiated its food needs Until one day, it satiated the needs of another dinosaur, which was carnivorous. But the biggest consequence happened nearly 66 billion years back, and the dinosaurs went extinct. If it was not for a 6-mile wide asteroid falling on Earth and decimating 97% of Earth's life form, would you and I be sitting here? This planet would probably be teeming with dinosaurs everywhere. I know there are people sitting here who believe that they're sitting here because they did something good in their past life. Sorry, a piece of rock fell on Earth, decimated the dinosaurs, and that's why we are sitting here. The person who should be sitting here and talking about it should be the dinosaur, because he should be sitting here and saying, what wrong did I do? I did all the right things to go right up the food chain, did all the brilliant things to rule this earth, and suddenly I'm not there. 6 to 2 million years ago is when the first humans arrived on this planet. And it's not a simple process again. There were at least 15 to 20 different species of humans, which collectively over the period of evolutionary cycle is what we are all sitting here. There has been no right or wrong in this process. It's just been steps after steps after steps of evolution, small actions that are the consequences in front of us. 1.5 million to 790,000 years ago, man discovered the usage of fire. Now, was fire good or bad? Well, if it heated up a community of people on a cold night, fire was good. If it helped you cook your food, fire was good. But when it caused destruction, when people fought amongst themselves, fire was bad. So is fire good or bad? Is fire right or wrong? No. Fire is just an action. It's the consequence that gives it its nature, its moral weight. That's where fire comes in. 40,000, 45, 200,000 years ago is when we see the first signs of religion, and that's where things start getting interesting. Because religion is where we realize that the practices start coming in, the rigidity starts coming in. And how do we know this? We know this how they buried their dead. And this is where we realize what were the ceremonies that they did, how they started doing things repeatedly rather than in a random pattern. 7,000 years ago, the first agrarian societies evolved. People started settling down, growing their own food. And this is where the next big consequence happened. The rise of civilizations. The human civilizations epicentered around places like Iraq, Egypt, India, China, Peru, Mexico. And with civilizations came rules and regulations, power struggles, conflicts, right and wrong. And that's where we started with the politics. That's where we started with all the fights. The first recorded large-scale conflict is in 2700 BC between the forces of Sumer and Elam. And since then, people have just kept on fighting over who felt who was right and who felt who was wrong. And the beauty of it is, when we go through our mythology, we realize that for silly reasons they fought over. We'll take the case of two very old civilizations, the Indus Valley civilization and the Mesopotamian civilization. And we have the mythologies, the Indian mythology and Zoroastrian mythology. Now the concepts of good and bad, if you look into Indian mythology, a good god is called Devta or Dev, while a bad god is called Asur. Am I clear? Good is Dev, bad is Asur. Very simple, right? Not so simple. Because we go into Zoroastrian mythology, the word for good god is Ahur. Ahur Mazda. Ahur is good, but you can always say that's a play of words. Come on. Ahur, Asur are two different words. But this is where it gets much more interesting. Because the word for evil in Zoroastrian mythology is Dev. I repeat that, it's Dev. If Ahur means good in Zoroastrian mythology, it means Asur is bad in Indian mythology. If Dev is good in Indian mythology, Dev is bad in Zoroastrian mythology. And this word Dev becomes Div, meaning evil in Islamic scriptures. And the word devil owes its origin to this word in Christian mythology. So which one is right and which one is wrong? Can someone tell me? It's all crazy out there. It all depends on the perspective. And that's where the right and wrong construct does not work. Because it's always governed by the power which be at that place at that point. In all probability, if you look into the action and consequence framework, you realize that maybe there was a tribe around the Indus Valley area. There were two tribes which fought. The day one, they stayed in India. The Asurs lost. They went to Mesopotamia. Now each calls each other evil. But does that change the story? Does that change the perspective? No, it does not. And that's where, over history we have kept fighting amongst ourselves, and this keeps on repeating across all the ages. We talk about early civilization from 2700 BC to 500 AD, right from the Mesopotamian war to the Roman wars. We go into the medieval period from 500 AD to 1500 AD, the Islamic conquest, Crusades, Mongol conquest, so on and so forth. In the early modern period from 1500 AD to 1800 AD, the Cherokee Wars of religion, the Colonial Wars, the Ottoman Wars, the Mughal Wars. From 1880 to the present age, you have the Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War, the Boer War, Cold War, and all recent conflicts. And every way to find half the world says they are right, half the world says they are wrong. But we are fighting on to one war where we can't say who's right and who's wrong. And that's today's climate war. Droughts, melting glaciers, smog, rising temperature. A 2018 study tells us that humans today are consuming 1.7 times Earth, and that number has only kept on growing. And then that's the point you realize, what is the point of all the civilization? What is the point of all the rights, wrongs, rules, regulations? If this is the consequence that we end up with. Humans have been on this earth, if earth was existed for 24 hours, humans have been on this earth in the last 2 minutes. For 23 hours and 58 minutes, the world did fantastically well without the humans. And the last 2 minutes, you have created a mess. And if this is the consequence, then we really need to question ourselves. Because 66 million years ago, it was the dinosaur and the act of an asteroid. But 66 million years later, it is planet Earth and the acts of us humans. Now, action and consequence approach is a much more logical approach. Now, what that tells us is it tries to imagine multiple outcomes for a single situation, for a single action. And this is what we need to teach our children. With the example of the person trying to attempt an exam, you can always say that you pray in front of the deity. It will give you peace of mind. It's possible that it can happen. But if you study hard, maybe you will pass the examination. So multiple choices leading to multiple kinds of outcomes. And what that leads to is it enables choice and in turn responsibility. And that's where is the most important thing that humanity needs today. Not rigid constructs, not rules and regulations defined by power centers or religion centers, but human choice, enabling them to do what does affect, that gives better consequences, and learn from the bad consequences and act again. See, we need to understand that actions themselves are neutral. It's a consequence which gives them the moral weight. Now, every day in our lives, we do a lot of things big and small, which are seldom purely right or purely wrong. We do things that are driven by intent, constrained by circumstances, and lead to outcomes which are seldom in our control. I repeat that. We do things which are driven by intent, constrained by consequences or circumstances, and lead to consequences which are seldom in our control. When we understand this fine nuance, we realize that we take all our actions with a lot of empathy. We take with a lot of sensitivity because of the ripple effect each of our actions create in the ecosystem around us. I'll give you a few examples. Use of a plastic straw. If I go by the right and wrong construct, half of you will say it's right, half of you will say it's wrong. Maybe a lot more will say it's wrong with their awareness. But if I look into the action and consequence construct, then if this is the world we are turning into our lands and rivers, then we have a problem. That's what we need to teach our children. A gas guzzling SUV? Half of you will say it's right, half of you will say it's wrong. But if I get into the action and consequence construct and tell you that's what's leading to smog, that's what's leading to mentally glaciers, then you do understand there's a problem. Development in the mountainous areas and the fragile ecosystem systems. Everybody wants development. But if you talk about the consequences, if it leads to landslides and loss of biodiversity, then it's a choice that we need to question. You can't say it as right or wrong. A Western closet toilet. You say, why would I put a picture of that here? That's a sign of civilization for sure. But if that's turning our rivers into gutters, nitrification of our water bodies, then there is a problem that we need to fix for. The nitrogen cycle was always meant to exist on the land, it was never meant to exist in water. Dental hygiene, perfect score. Everybody thinks it's right. But if our plastic brushes are filling up the landfills and the water bodies, then we have problem. That's a consequence. We really don't want to have that. Maybe the Indian system of using a neem twig or raccoon might be an interesting option. But we need to evaluate the consequences and sustainable. That's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Avoid eating a fish. Oh my God. Non-vegetarians, vegetarians, vegans, and I don't know what not. We have a fight here right away. But the problem is not the fish. The problem is the plastic bottle in that product, which is turned into microplastic and entered our food systems. It's in the fish, it's in the food we eat, and it's in our bodies today. Is that the consequence that we want? See, I can give examples and examples again and again and again, but we can come to a common understanding. Scientists today believe that if we don't meet the 1.5 degree global temperature goal, then there are social consequences, there are geopolitical consequences, there are cultural consequences, there are environmental consequences, and I can keep on detailing all those to be. But what that finally means is that humans don't survive. And that's something we all need to question today. Is that the choice that we want to head to? Because it's finally about the choices that we make. It's not about who's right, who's wrong. And that's why I say, break all the shackles. Forget what the society says, forget what the power to be says, forget what the religion says. Evaluate the choices that you want to make, evaluate the actions that you want to make, and look into the consequences. If the consequences are not good, please go back and revisit and change them. Because nature will not give us a second choice. In the words of Robert Ingersoll, there are in nature neither rewards nor punishment. There are consequences. Now, as I come to the end of my talk, I know, let me put a very fun construct to why the right and wrong in action and consequence differ and the action and consequence was better. Okay? Now, if I go with the right and wrong construct, once my talk is over, half of you will feel, what a boring lecture. Let's forget about it. Half of you will say it was a great lecture. So, right, wrong again. But then does that lead anywhere? It does not. Let me put it in a nicer way. The action and consequence construct. So let's say there is no thunderous applause after this talk is over. What are the three possibilities? The first possibility, I get angry, I get upset, I am indifferent. Now, if all of you believe that I am the Zen kind of a guy who will, regain all my calm and consciousness and regain my peace, that's a possibility. Okay? But then if I am like that psychopath living next door whom you never realized existed, maybe I remain angry. I get vengeful. That's an escalation that you don't want. So if I regain my peace, then possibly you all have my gratitude, public creation, listeners, and so on and so forth. But let's say I remain angry, I remain vengeful, and I'm like that kind of a guy, I will see you and I will get you. Then you have a bigger problem. Because you are then faced by rocks. So, not clapping also even has consequences. And I feel this is a much better way to understand the concept. If I put it into an action consequence construct, that's where it makes sense. While the right and wrong, they just put it in a, you get and die out there. So, jokes apart, it's all about the choices that we make. And I hope all of us can look into our actions more closely, more empathy, so that we all go towards a better world. Thank you so much.